So, Stacey, did you graduate from BYU?
I did.
And what did you study?
I studied public relations, and I was like this close from a minor in business, but I already had a job lined up, Studio C, before I graduated, so I was like, I don't need the minor.
So you did Studio C after you graduated?
I did it before, and then after I graduated, it became my full-time job.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many years were you at BYU?
I was at BYU from my freshman year was 2006. I did a year of college, freshman year generals. I went on a 2-year mission. I went to Brazil. I loved it.
Wow, where? Oh, that's where my husband went.
Oh, really? I went to Rio.
Okay, he was in Brasilia.
Oh, they have good meat there, I heard. Like a lot of cows. But Rio was amazing. I went to Rio de Janeiro. I came back, worked for a little bit, and then I've been at BYU ever since.
So you've been in Provo since 2006.
Provo specifically.
Wow, okay, so I have to ask, what was it like being a gay man of color at BYU?
Of color. It's a little cherry on top.
Well, I mean, that's,
Yeah. It was, honestly, I'm going to be really straightforward. Like, I love Provo. I really do. Provo is home. I've been there since 2006. My support system is there. My friends are there. I learned so much about myself in Provo. And I think while I was at BYU and I kind of stuffed my sexuality away. And I just loved BYU too. I had such a great time. I made such great friends. And I never felt like I was being hurt at BYU. But it's funny because I know a lot of people's experience is different, but it kind of caught up to me later, especially after I graduated and I started being in this place where I'm like, oh yeah, I should get married now and I should like multiply and replenish. And it wasn't working out for me. I dated a couple women very seriously, saved up for rings twice. Nothing was working out. And I was like, okay, I promised God, I was like, listen, I'm not going to marry a woman unless I'm attracted to her. I'm trying everything and I'm doing everything I can, but I know this is what you want me to do. So I'm just not going to do this unless I'm attracted to her. And it never panned out. And I hurt a lot of people. I feel like there were women I got really close to because I was doing my best to like do everything I was supposed to do. And I just like shattered people and they really were left in the dark. I couldn't really talk to them about it, you know?
They didn't know why.
No. But eventually, I found myself committed to living a life of just being single. I was like, I'm just going to be single and I'm going to do my thing. And I think that's where the pain really caught up to me. Everything that people were experiencing all throughout their freshman year, throughout their, undergraduate degrees and getting married and dating is just, I'd never experienced it. And like loneliness like caught up to me full fledged and it hit me like a train. I was rocked. I found myself at the lowest of lows, and I'm a pretty happy person.
You are.
Thanks.
Clearly.
But I'm a very happy person, and I was like, I'd never experienced a low like this. I stopped taking care of my body as well, and it's just I was turning to some like destructive behavior, and eventually I came to the point where I was like, I just got on my hands and knees, and I was like, God, listen. Like begging. I was like, I need some direction. I need something. And it was the first time I'd ever prayed about my sexuality and if I was okay versus God, please fix me. I know it's wrong. It's clearly wrong, in this church, at this school. It's bad. And I always, prayed for him to fix me. And this was the first time I was like, God, please let me know what you want me to do. Am I okay? And it was also the first time that I felt so positive and so good about myself. I felt content about who I was for the first time since I could even tell that my sexuality wasn't, hetero. Since I was like 10.
So you feel like you got a real answer from God that you're okay,
yeah,
just as you are.
That's honestly the only reason. That's like my mantra in my life was just like, if I'm good with God, like who can stand in my way, right? All throughout my 2-year mission that like really buoyed me up when I was having my lows. At BYU, when I was having a hard time, that buoyed me up, and I turned to it in my lowest moment, and it buoyed me up. And after I got that feeling, that impression, I was like, all right, if I'm good with God, who can stand in my way? You know what I mean? And
right.
So that for me was kind of like, you just got the story, right? You got the moment where it like really all caught up, and it caught up all at once, and then kind of the breakthrough moment for me, my renaissance.
Wow. So research has shown that people who are gay, they are trying to live a celibate life, they're waiting for the next life,
Right.
are some of the most depressed people there are.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've heard it equated to, well, what about people who are women who never get the opportunity to marry? To me, there's a different thing
It is.
in many ways, because there's not that self-hate and that self-shame.
Yeah.
And there's also hope that maybe next week I'll meet someone, right? But if you have to say, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be alone.
Yeah, there's no hope.
And I think that's one of the biggest blessings in life, is to have love and someone to share life with. And when you don't even, you know, when you think it's just me forever.
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the head. My sexuality is more than just intimacy, right? And I think there was a point where I was like in my singles ward, and I was just like, I took strength from knowing, okay, other people are single too. But what I also noticed were other people were going on dates. And other people were, even if they stayed single, they like held a hand, or they kissed someone they cared about, or they hugged someone they had a crush on and giggled about it. And I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't even entertain the idea of me potentially being happy in a relationship without the fear of, like, you know, eternal damnation, which feels like higher stakes than like death, which is so sad to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Can I ask you this?
Please go as deep as you want.
Did you ever buy into the rhetoric? Did you believe that you were broken, that you were wrong?
Oh, for sure. I knew I was broken. I always compared it to the thorn in my side. I was like, you know what? This was when I was like in middle school, maybe early high school. I was like, this is the thorn in my side. This is my thing that like I have to prove to God. And this was stuff that I had gathered from like church and like, bless my sweet, sweet parents, but them trying to be good Christians, you know, that they were like, this was what I gathered from like the people in my life, was like, all right, this is really bad, but it's something I can't like just remove easily. So I had to kind of like bear this cross. I have to deal with this thorn in my side until God fixes it and it goes away. And over the course of like more than a decade, it didn't go away, right? And I eventually came to the point where I was like, okay, this is just something I'm going to have for the rest of my life. And what I realized was like the thorn in my side never got smaller, never got less painful. It just got bigger and more painful. It just like started tearing me apart. It started off as like a sliver and eventually felt like a wedge that was going to rip me apart. And that's when I was like at my lowest of low. I was like, I don't know what to do. But it's really interesting because as I've come out and as I've started being more authentic, that pain that I've experienced has started to get smaller. And it made me realize my whole life that like the thorn in my side wasn't my sexuality. It was how I felt about it, what I was taught about it. And as I started being more authentic and navigating my relationship with that, it started getting smaller. And I tell you right now, I do not experience pain related to my sexuality. No. Pain comes from other places now.
Yeah.
It comes from the external environment, but it's not coming from my identity or how I feel about myself.
Right, right. Well, you know, we were sitting in this room around the piano with Kristen Chenoweth, you know, from Wicked.
Yeah.
And she's telling all of these, there are about 20, 30 youth in this room, and she's telling them, I want you to know how amazing you are and how beautiful you are, and you are everything, right? And this girl raises her hand from the back of the room. She's probably 16 years old. And she says, you know, I hear what you're saying to me. I try so hard to love myself. I try to see myself as a good person. But when I hear in the newspaper people debating my worth, when I hear our legislator debating my worth, when I go to church and they're talking about people like me, it's so hard to keep loving myself. And it kills you to think these are young people.
It's heartbreaking.
You know, we do know from science that people are born with their gender, the way they see their gender, and their sexuality. To me, it's a God thing. Like, right, we've always had a percentage of the population, and I want to talk about population in a minute, but a percentage of the population that has been LGBTQ since the beginning of the earth.
Since the beginning.
And it's going to happen until the end of time.
Yes.
And I see it as a God thing. Science now understands people are born this way. It's part of the survival of the species. And it's up to us to decide, how are we going to treat people who are LGBTQ? Will we continue to shame them?
Right.
Or, since I've been doing Encircle, I will tell you the best people I've ever met, the kindest hearts, the most creative, the most brilliant, the most forgiving people are many of the LGBTQ people.
I mean, we really are, but
I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that people have to grow up with self-hate and that crux to bear, rather than just going to be who they are and give the world the best of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so sad, and from my own personal experience and the experience of like my queer friends, it's exactly how it is. I mean, you define yourself by what you're taught growing up as a kid. It's what your parents tell you. It's what you're taught in school. We know that that's how we define ourselves as children. We don't even see ourselves as separate from our parents to a certain age. And when the message you're getting your whole life is that this thing that has always been a part of you is bad, is evil, is wrong, how do you not internalize that? How do you not internalize? People say, and it's really common to say, hate the sin, but love the sinner. But it's hard when you say, when you are the sin in people's eyes, they say, hey, I don't hate you. I hate what you're doing. And it's like, no, you hate who I am. And I don't know how to separate those things. And I mean, for the longest time, I hated who I was. Luckily, I grew up in a home that was a little different. Maybe it wasn't your most conventional home, but I feel like it was very fortunate for me and my identity. But at the same time, I came out when I was 30. You know what I mean? That's 3 decades of me hating myself and trying to figure out how to change who I was made to be. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I have in common with you that I went to BYU. I call Provo my home.
I love Provo.
I do too. I think some of the best people in the world live in Provo. It's a great place to call home. But I went to BYU for 7 years. I did undergraduate, and then I did law school there.
Oh, and law school?
Yeah.
Wow.
So you talk about, some of that loneliness. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of loneliness and a lot of self-hate, even as a straight, cis, privileged woman, right?
Really?
Because I think, one thing that we do is we're about being perfect in every way. So I remember, dating because you want to marry someone, and that's kind of what we're there for,
the goal,
right?
Yeah.
So I went to BYU 7 years and never got married. Okay, so I was really wondering what was wrong with me. Oh. And you go out on all these dates, and every time you're measuring, am I smart enough? Am I spiritual enough? Am I good looking enough? Am I fun enough? Like every time, and you've got this person who you feel like you're being judged. I cannot imagine putting another layer on top of that. Like I have this thing that I cannot share with the world, or I may be kicked out of the school. I may lose my place in heaven.
I may lose my friends. I may lose my family. I may lose my job. I know coming out in Studio C, or coming out, I guess this was a little after we left Studio C, but when I was coming out, I sat my coworkers down, the cast, and I was like, listen, I'm going to come out publicly, and I want you to know that we could lose everything we've worked to build. And it was so hard because I was like, it's not just something I built, it was something we built. And I was like, we can lose everything we worked to build. We can have the very people that we're working so hard to entertain turn their back on us. We can have the institution we love so much condemn us. And I mean, I'd seriously had all the worst case scenarios planned out in my head. It was a lot of pressure, but I also knew that I can go back to having that wedge in my side, tearing me apart if I didn't embrace authenticity.
Yeah. And we know as human beings, we don't thrive and we're not our best self unless we live authentic lives.
Right. Recently, I've been thinking of the concept of honesty, and it's something that's like super important to me. It's a Christ-like attribute. Honesty is a step closer to divinity, right? We know this. The truth is, truth and light, these are really important aspects in our community, our culture, and our religion. And I really believe at the core of honesty is to perceive and present things as they are. And that's even means looking at myself and being like, let's be honest with yourself, Stacey, you're gay. That meant being, let's be honest with yourself, Stacey, you're not presenting yourself authentically. And I experienced so much cognitive dissonance. It's experienced so much pain as I thought I was doing what was right. But at the end of the day, I realized in order to take that step closer to divinity, to happiness, I had to be honest. I had to be authentic.
I'm glad you are. Because I look at all those other BYU students who need to have other people who are role models, who are showing them I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with me.
There's nothing.
So why do you think this is such a big issue in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Why is this something that Holland just expressed? Mm-hmm. We will lose accreditation if necessary. I will go to my death defending this. I don't know if that's exactly the words he used, but like, what do they
Why
fear?
is it such an issue?
Because to me, what I believe in is Christ is loving, God is loving. We were created as we are, and we should celebrate who we are and not be afraid of who we are.
Yeah.
Like, it just, and I think you look at the Bible, and there's a few verses in the Old Testament that talk about homosexuality. Mm-hmm. If you talk to biblical scholars, they will say most of the way we interpret those are incorrect, mm-hmm. and it's not really just on its face the way it appears. When Christ came, right, to give the new law, he never once mentioned it.
Never.
All he said was, love one another, mm-hmm. right? And so when I listened to this talk on Tuesday, I felt like it was institution, possibly above people, and maybe that's a misinterpretation. But, I think Christ is all about loving.
I think, and you know what, I to be really honest, I think it's a tough issue to address in the church, especially if you've never experienced anything besides, being heterosexual. If you've never experienced that pain, if you've never experienced that sadness, if you've never experienced the fact that you're encouraged to hide and the damage it can do, if you've never experienced a family member and seen them at their lowest of low and wonder what you could do to help them, I think if you've never experienced that, it could be really, really tough. And so I honestly, I read the talk and I just was like, I don't think this is someone trying to hurt people. I think this is someone trying to do their best with what they have. But they might be lacking some of that experience and that exposure. I think it's tough because at the end of the day, we really want to do the best. I think as a community, we really feel like it's our responsibility to protect our environment and create a wholesome, pure area for people to thrive and be protected and not be radicalized and whatnot. But I think what happens sometimes is this wall you build, instead of a door that you open and invite people in, this wall you build automatically puts people on the outside. And I was put on the outside of the wall at a young age. I never had a way in. I could pretend, I could try to make it work, but I automatically was on the outside of the wall. And I don't know, it's hard to say, but I do sympathize with the concept of trying to do what's right. But it's hard when what you feel is right is at the cost of lives. You know what I mean? Because this isn't just an issue of I was sad. The people are killing themselves over this. People are attempting suicide and succeeding over this. I don't know how that compares to, BYU professors supporting the LGBTQ community, how many people are experiencing that on that side, but it's really hard. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't know how. So I teach cycling classes in Provo Rec Center and Springville.
I'm gonna come.
You should come. Do you like cycle?
No, but I should.
So I teach cycling classes, and most everyone that comes to my class is LDS. And I had this mom come up to me, just very active. Mom comes up to me, and she's just in tears before class. It was the day after Holland's talk kind of went viral, I guess. And she was in tears, and she was like, I don't know what you're experiencing, but she was like, I want you to know that I love who I am, and I love the life I'm working to build, but I also want you to know that I support you and I love you and I will work to make sure you're supported. And I was first off touched, but the second thing was it was heartbreaking to see her have this turmoil. What kind of turmoil is that where you have to choose between loving someone and like supporting an institution? Like, it was heartbreaking to see her in that position. And I think that's kind of, and I mean, take that to the individual. That's like something that lived in my heart for the longest of time, right? But I was just like, I thought it was so unfair to put good people in that position. People that are trying to do what Christ asked, to love one another, knowing that that is important than many, many, many things in this world is love. And when you're reacting in fear and concern, when you're reacting to a couple memos from people who are scared to send their kids to a school that's supporting other people, when you put fear above love, I think you get things like this.
Yeah, a lot of pain. Unnecessary pain.
Yeah.
Stacey, how did it feel as a gay man to hear the speech or to read it? Like, I just can't imagine, because I know the pain I felt. I can't imagine the pain you felt.
So when I came out, before I came out publicly, I talked to my my bishop. I talked to like ward leaders, and I was like, Bishop, I'm gay. And he was like, but you're so good. you're doing like several callings and you're so supportive. And I was like, gotcha. No, I'm just kidding. I was like, yeah, but I mean, this is something that's important to me. And he was like, are you sure this is the direction you want to move in? I mean, this was his first time hearing about it. This is something I'd lived with for decades, right? And he pushed back, and I was like, Bishop, I'm going to be really honest with you. I got a lot of inspiration and motivation from Joseph Smith's story. I mean, I feel like there are so many similar parallels. I just told him about the concept of like, I prayed about something, and I got divine inspiration about who I am and what I'm to do. And I know that a lot of people are going to criticize me. I know that a lot of people are going to tell me I'm wrong, even people that care about me. But at the end of the day, if I don't honor my relationship with the Lord, like, what am I doing? Who am I honoring? And he got a little quiet about it, but I think he was just like thinking about it. And so when I read Holland's talk, my first thought was like, I know who I am. I know what I'm here for. And I really respect Elder Holland a lot. But if God supports me in being who I am, like, who's gonna trump that? I mean, take it up with my boss, right? You know, you can't trump that. And so I was like, you know what? People have opinions, whatever. I didn't think it was a huge deal until I started seeing how it affected other people that don't quite feel that way, or have been in situations like that. Even people that have left the church a long time ago, but that are still trying to work that internalized shame and guilt. It doesn't just go away when you leave the church. It's like muscle memory. I was seeing people posting about being hurt, feeling betrayed. You know, they're just trying to, someone talked about getting the support from a professor that they needed to finally take the step to be a little more authentic. And that almost got erased. It was condemned. That was when I started being affected, because one of my goals in coming out was to be a support to other people. And I think I was telling you this earlier. Like, it's about the kids. It's about the little Staceys that are, 12 years old, that know they're horrendous monsters for no other reason besides their existence. And that's what motivates me. And the idea that there are going to be more kids that are now going to be maybe hearing more because, take up our muskets. We got to defend it. We got to let LGBTQ people know where they fit in the scheme of things. I mean, I'm not really sure how different people interpret that, but it makes me nervous. How many more kids do we have to lose?
Right. And for those that we don't lose, what pain are they experiencing?
Oh my gosh.
What self-hate do they have?
Mm-hmm. I mean, same question for you. What was your reaction reading the words?
I felt like it was almost Prop 8 again. It's interesting how back when Prop 8 hit, I spent a week, like, literally almost couldn't get out of bed, because that there are parents, grandparents, siblings the individual, we are all aching because we want to love each other. I think that Mormons are the best of people. You know, they
Oh my goodness, yeah.
they really want to love wholly, and then there's that block, like I can't, and which then brings in a judgment that causes pain that nobody wants. It's sad because like I said, I went to BYU 7 years. It's hard to think of all these kids who are going to stay, but in what circumstances?
At what cost?
At what cost? The parents who come to Encircle not knowing what to do and loving their child so much and loving their gospel and cannot reconcile the two together.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just there's this needless suffering. And I turn to science a lot and I go, we understand a lot, but we don't recognize that this is how God makes people, and it's meant to be, and it's intentional, it's beautiful and wonderful. Why do we shame people when we could say, is it just because this is a minority? Like I've talked to Greg Prince, who's a scholar. He has written a number of books about, will the church ever change? Are they going to allow same-sex marriage? Are people who are gay going to be full members of the church, right? Not, we know from history with civil rights that if no one's whole when they're not completely equal, right? He said, well, every policy in the church has changed with time, so this one will too. But it almost feels like because we put so much on, I'm a female, you're a male, this is your role in heaven, that it changes the church so much into the core that the church almost doesn't look the same. If we take that away, or we don't, rely so much on our gender, which then, and sexuality. It aches me that it has to be this issue.
Yeah.
To the extent that it is.
You know what's interesting is when I came out publicly, I got flooded with thousands and thousands of messages online. And I was like, oh wow, this is crazy. I did not expect there to be this many people. It's majority teens, young adults. And what's interesting is there was a percentage that weren't from queer teens and queer adults. It was from people that resonated with the message of authenticity and a culture that can sometimes feel like a lot of pressure to fit the mold. A woman messaged me she was like, I just don't feel like kids are for me. And she was like, your post gave me confidence to be more authentic with myself and be honest with myself, to maybe look a little deeper. And I was blown away, and someone said, it was just really interesting. Someone said, my mom passed away, and I feel like I haven't really had a chance to mourn. I feel like I have to be happy, but your post helped me see that I can be authentic with myself and honest with myself and really sit in that experience, but also look for positive ways to move forward. And I was blown away. I think when we support the minority, when we love people wherever they are, when we support the minority, it can't help but help everyone, It can't help but spread. I think the fear is that, we support LGBTQ youth or young adults or people in the church. We actually love them, because I think there's a difference between love and tolerance. And I think we get it a little mixed when we say, I love you, but I don't support you. I think that's a little twisted. I can't imagine my mom being like, I love you, but, you can't talk to me about BYU, and I'm not happy that you're going to BYU. And if you mention it in my house, there's going to be a problem. I was like, that doesn't sound like love. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just take that in a different direction. But anyways, I feel like we're reaching out so much with fear instead of love.
We know that the average LGBTQ youth realizes they're gay, lesbian, bisexual by about age 12, about when puberty happens, right? Some are much younger. Right. Some people are older, but that's an average time period.
Right.
We also know that people on average don't come out until they're 22. So we've got this decade of time when people have this secret. And what are they hearing in communities like Provo, about themselves, right? So by the time a child comes out, sometimes there's already so much, destruction done or pain or shame, that it takes a lot of work to learn to love yourself just as you are. I have to say that I am amazed by these kids who come to Encircle, how brave they are. Like, to think 15-year-old saying, in a community like mine, this is who I am. And I just think I cannot wait to see who these kids are going to be when they're my age, right? Like, if you can live an authentic life at 15 like that, up against so much, these kids have so much to offer the world. And when we talk a lot about mental health in the LGBTQ community and how many people struggle with suicidality, depression. But why? It's not because they're gay.
Yeah.
It's because of the things that their communities, their churches, their teachers, their parents sometimes are telling them about themselves. Like, it has to stop. And I just feel like we don't have enough education around it. There's a lot that we do know, but are people studying that? Or do we just listen to people telling us how we should see other people?
I think it's so tough, and I don't fault people for trying, but at the end of the day, the results are what the results are, and we have to take responsibility for that, right? Can you imagine how hard it was already being in junior high, being a middle schooler, all the internalized messages you're getting, how you felt about yourself?
So it's hard enough
it's
just
hard
to
enough.
be that age, right?
And then take that and then add a layer where it's coming from your family, your trusted leaders, your friends, your like friends' parents. And it's just like, and it's not even a little layer, it's a layer that's like, you're a bad person. It's like, at the end of the day, this thing you can't ever shake, it's going to be attached to you forever, is bad. And by virtue of that, you're bad. It's like, that's just it's so sad when in this community where we want so badly to support people and help them grow and grow closer to their higher power, like, that's where most of the hate comes from. When I came out, I didn't get any hate from people that had left the church. I didn't get hate from the LGBTQ plus community. I didn't get hate from these communities we tend to vilify. I got hate from people that were considering themselves active members of the church. One lady reached out and she was like, "You're disgusting." She was like, "You're absolutely disgusting, and I can't believe you're doing this." This wasn't from a radicalized professor trying to tell me to go a terrible way. This was from someone who considered themselves a member of the church.
And they consider themselves doing what God would want them to do.
Yeah, and they thought they were doing what was right. They thought they were defending the faith. They had taken up their musket, and they were like, the best way for me to protect this environment is for you to know that you are horrible, that you are wrong, and that what you're doing is bad. And it wasn't just one. There was a ton, There were a lot of people. And it was kind of heartbreaking. I just really hoped. I was like, God, please don't let them have kids that are queer.
I'm sorry I had to go through that.
You know what? It's honestly the risk I took. I knew the risk I was jumping into by just merely existing authentically. And even though that's kind of sad, I knew what I was stepping into. And even though I got all sorts of hate and I got treated very poorly in certain situations, I am so much happier now as I am. It's like, even though all that negative stuff came against me and it was like the source of a lot of my pain, I'm in a better place. It was worth it. Right.
Well, one last question.
Yeah.
So what I see at Encircle when there's a conference talk like this, I will tell you that, a few years ago when Elder Oaks gave his talk at a general conference, we saw a lot of the fallout. Generally, at Encircle, on average, we'll take 2 youth to the hospital who are so suicidal each month, okay? The 2 weeks following, 15 kids. So I think what happens is those kids hear that message and they go, that self-hate, or God doesn't love me, or I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And then parents who may have been more loving and supportive hear that, and do they pull away? They're trying to do what's right. My question for you would be, what would you tell parents
Oh,
you
wow.
know, who just heard this, and they may have an LGBTQ niece or nephew or child, or, you know, what would you say that is a good way to help those who are in pain?
So my parents aren't perfect by any means, but they're wonderful people. And my mom is the most devout of the devout LDS, community. She's just so devout. I mean, I think she ran into some people from the Amish community not too long ago on a trip, and she was like, "Hey, they're onto something." And I was like, "Mom, calm down."
Or do you want to book a Mormon?
Yeah, she's like, they're nailing modesty. She's just like super, super devout. And when I came out, it was really tough for her, right? And she said, so I came out to her and she said, "I love you so much, but you cannot bring that stuff to my home." She was like, I love you, and I want you to know that I will always love you, but you can't bring that to my home.
Meaning a boyfriend, maybe, or
It was,
Yeah,
it was
whatever.
kind of like anything gay, not in my house. And this was her being like loving, her definition, following the loving but not supportive route, right? Where you're like, I don't want to confuse you. I don't want you to be confused where my loyalties lie. But unbeknownst to her, I've known for 30 years, and it's part of why I hated myself, right? And so I was like honest with her. I was like, "Mom, I respect your home. I respect your rules, but I probably won't see you for a while." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, you can't accept 25% of me and expect me to leave the 75% at your door. I can't leave my arm at your door when I walk in your house. This is who I am. I'm a package deal." So while I respect you, and it wasn't really like a confrontational thing, but we're both very strong-willed. I was like, while I respect you and I respect your rules, you probably won't see me. And so we ended the phone call, and it was really sad, whatever. She calls me back the next day, and she's like, "I've been praying about this, and I've been putting a lot of thought into it, and I felt immediately chastised when I turned to the Lord about it." She said, "I was wrong."
wow.
She said, "I was wrong. I will make the bouquet at the wedding." She said, and I was like, "Well, tell me more." And she said, what I was called to, what I was reminded of is that I believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing God, and that I am not all-powerful and all-knowing. And I don't know why I think I'm your last link to happiness. I don't know why I think I'm the last one who can save you when there is an all-powerful being who controls all. And so I'm going to do what he wants me to do, which is to love you. And I know that means to show up for you. And I'm going to let him worry about the rest of that. And I was like, that's profound, Mom. And our relationship has been so much better because of it,
Wow. And isn't it great that it didn't take years, that you didn't
Yeah.
miss out on having that relationship with your mom
Yeah.
for a long time? Because I think that's one of the things that some of the youth we meet, they have this hole. As humans, we need our families. We want our parents to love and accept
Yeah.
us. There's a deep need for that. And I think sometimes we slow our progress down and being our best person when we don't get that, right?
Yeah.
And so your mom sounds pretty awesome.
She's pretty great, and she's not perfect, but you know what? Like, our relationship is better, and I think this is something I absolutely just like adore, and I think a lot of people love this about the church too, is that it's about families. The whole goal is bringing your family closer together and empowering your family to have a loving environment and to grow, And I think about what our situation could have been like if my mom would have been like, "I can't accept you," and I'd be like, "Well, I can't change."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would have ripped us apart. That would have absolutely tore us apart. I have siblings that support me. I have siblings that are more on the fence. It would have wreaked havoc on my family, and we see it all the time. We see people come in and their families are broken because their parents can't support them, or a sibling can't see past, the concept. How can I love you when you are this thing?
I see it every day. And I think that's one of the best things about the church is our love of family. But sometimes it's really conditional. If you believe God the way I do, if you stay in between, this path that
Then
I've
I will
set
love
for
you.
you, then you're fully loved. And I think love is families are about unconditional. We're on this journey together, and I'm going to love and support you just for who you are and honor that.
I mean, isn't that how God is? Like, I mean, I believe in a God who, regardless of who you are or where you're from, or just your very makeup, not only did he create you, but he supports you in your endeavors. He supports you in your journey for truth, your journey to be honest and authentic. That's the God I believe in. That's the God that has always supported me. Not a God that's like, you got to ditch your kids. Not a God that's like, you can tell your kids you love them, but that means you can't give them any indicator that you're happy with their life at all. Yeah. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the God that I see in this house and in the other Encircle homes is one that shows up in people. Mm-hmm. People come here to love and to serve and to make sure these kids and adults know that they matter and they're perfect. And you see parents come in who are scared to death their child just come out, and you have another parent show up at the right time and say, listen, I want to sit with you. I want to tell you this is the best thing that ever happened to our family. I want to help you with some of the language. I want, and you see things that aren't just coincidental, but that, like,
this is divine.
This is divine. And these kids are loved and looked after, I believe, Yeah. And, I'm just grateful to people like you who will put it all on the line and who are a great example for them. And they show them you got a future and you got a great future and you're an amazing person and there shouldn't be a day wasted on self-hate. And I think the biggest key is looking inside. Mm-hmm. One last thing, Tom Christofferson, who's Elder Christofferson's brother, helped us start Encircle. He was on our board.
Oh, wow.
And he came to a lunch that we have for parents. And, there's all these parents in the room, and I'm kind of curious, like, he got some hard questions, and I was curious how, being a gay man of faith, he would help these parents. And one thing he said that I will never forget is he said, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we teach personal revelation. We believe that God gives us personal revelation. And you as a parent need to listen to your child's personal revelation. And if maybe they need a break from the church for a few months or a few years or even forever, you have to believe that they too have that ability to know what's best for them. Mm-hmm. And I just think it was beautiful and meaningful, and we've got to trust each other. Yeah. And sometimes, is it just, does God let us know personally, right? We don't have to ask someone else permission to be who we are.
It like negates the whole concept of personal revelation that someone has to constantly, it just 100% makes sense. And I was going to ask you too, what do you tell parents that are coming in and that are like, how do I love my kid and my religion at the same time? Or how do I honor my religion but like support my child?
Well, I think that one of the most important things that I want Encircle to do is give people a safe space to walk in, a mom to walk in and say, this is what I'm afraid of. Mm-hmm. This is what I've been told. These are my concerns. And to have someone say, I understand that. Let's sit in that and let's talk about it. Let's learn, and then you see parents, when you open your heart, when you love your child, you can find a way often to love both your religion and your child. Maybe it's a little bit different than before your child came out, and I think that these parents and kids have to be better communicators,
right? And
very, very real and open, because sometimes mom needs to explain, this has been my whole life. I've dedicated everything to it. Mm-hmm. This is my community. This is how I celebrate holidays. I still want that in my life, but that doesn't mean they need to lose their child or not love them 100% and fully. Mm-hmm. Some people can't do both.
That's brilliant. I think you hit something really important there, where it's like, we need to create spaces where people can safely come as they are, and it's not going to be hostile. We need to create a space where someone can come in and say, I've had people come to me and go, my daughter is queer, and how do I fix her? And my first reaction, if it would have been, shame on you, you horrible person, would have hurt more than just one person, right? We need to create spaces where people can come in and say, for example, in my experience, I currently just have a wonderful, wonderful ward I'm a part of. And it doesn't feel like other wards are like this, but I came in and I was like, listen, Bishop, I'm gay, I'm dating, and I'm really trying to figure out what my relationship is with like God and the church. And he was like, I'm so glad you're here. We're all on a journey. This is a safe place for you. He's like, you can come, you can worship, you can figure out what things are. Come talk to me when you're ready. And I'm not going to be breathing down your back. I'm not going to try to punish you if I feel like you're doing something wrong. He created such a safe place for me. And I'm going to tell you that that's been monumental for me. And I know for other people in that ward. Yeah. Isn't that beautiful?
And that's Provo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Provo.
It's Provo. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, are you kidding me? Thank you for having me.
Well, you're changing the world.
We're changing the world, Stephenie.